Welcome to part 2 of this 3-part series of how to start a podcast. In this particular video, we're going to discuss 3 mistakes that I've made in the 2 years of having a podcast. And we're going to go in depth as to why those mistakes occurred and what I'm doing to fix them moving forward and to avoid making the same mistakes again. But in the previous video, part 1 of 3, I broke down how to start a podcast, tips, strategies, step by step. There's also a checklist, a transcript for you that is available. So if you want to view that, go to transactioncare.com. It will all live there. So before we jump into this, my name is Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily. And I decided to share this part of my experience because being an entrepreneur, we want to be dynamic. We want to diversify. We want to also, please our inner creative. If you are a creative person and podcasting is the medium that you choose, then I want to make sure I can provide the tips and value that I've learned as well as what I'm discovering along the way that can potentially help you increase your business, grow your business, or even just your own personal development. So let's jump into these 3 mistakes that I've made in the 2 years of hosting a podcast and having a podcast, and what I'll do to avoid making those mistakes moving forward. So the first one is wrong name, right time, new name, who dis. That is the first mistake. The second one, my consistency was defeated by disappointment. Yeah, that's pretty deep. Number 3 is forgetting my why. And there is a fourth, so stick around to the end as I unveil that as we go, because I'm not perfect and you're not going to be perfect in this process. But if we can do our best to avoid making these same mistakes, then I've done my job. I've discussed this on my show, The Keys, formerly known as the Transaction Care Podcast, but I recently changed the name of my podcast because Transaction Care just no longer resonated with the direction I wanted the show to go. And this was unveiled to me as I was interviewing people and having these deeper dialogues that went beyond just transactions and went beyond just TCing or real estate or even money. And I realized this name is no longer going to be able to hold these conversations that have to be had, whether it's a solo episode or I have a guest host or I'm interviewing someone. I need something that is going to, 1, be easy to remember, 2, align with the messaging that the messages that I'm conveying, which is key to when you're naming your show, is picking something that is, it is catchy, it is easy to say, easy to spell, easy to read, but also on the legal side, make sure no one has it, make sure it's not trademarked, and that the domain is available so you can create a website or have it route to your social media. But when it came to me changing my podcast name, I discussed this on my show, The Keys, where you can go to thekeyspodcast.com to listen to it. But like I said, it was unveiled to me as I was interviewing someone. And once I hit 50 episodes, I realized this is no longer just a real estate podcast. So I need something that is going to be versatile, universal, and again, easy to remember, because the messages that are coming from this podcast, I can't allow a name to be the block that prevents people from literally entering the doors to get these messages, to get these keys, to unlock the best you. That's my slogan. So it was making that decision early on, 1 year in, I realized, okay, I think I'm going to change the name of the podcast this year. But I was so indecisive and nervous. But I realized, I have a small but mighty community. I don't think they would notice the difference quite yet. And if I continuously talk about it and reiterate it to them, they'll catch on. I have a smart, mature, kind community. So if I say I'm going to change the name of the podcast, they're going to ride with me. And those are the type of supporters that I want in my corner. So the transition ended up being seamless. And it literally unlocked something in me once I changed the name. I was like, this is it. This is what wanted to do. And I had to do the thing. I had to do the thing to get to the thing. And this current thing is the Keys podcast. So when you are choosing your name, be mindful of my experience, but you also don't have to ever change the name or even have a name of the podcast. You could just name it after your name or call it the No Name Podcast. I don't know, but if you are struggling with naming your show, do your best to keep it simple, to the point, in alignment with your messaging, and make sure no one else has it. That's it. Mistake number 2, my consistency was defeated by disappointment. What do I mean when I say that? So, a part of naming my show the wrong name, or realizing that I had named the show the wrong name, I will say that certain people or certain lanes I wanted to go down just didn't align with the show that I was at the time producing, when it came to whether it was values, morals, belief systems, whatever the case may be. Doing research, and this can be the ugly side of media and having a show, and knowing your responsibility, right? I talked about that in part 1, is we have a job when we turn on these mics or we turn on the camera. When we choose to voice our opinions, our thoughts, our ideologies publicly, we have a responsibility to, again, be celebrated, challenged, or condemned. That's what I've realized, is no matter what you say, once it goes public, it's out and open for interpretation. And some may love it, some may hate it, and some may not care either way. But once you are challenged or condemned, how are you going to handle that? Or once I learned something about someone who I admired or wanted to work with that doesn't sit well with me or align with me, how am I going to approach that? So I let a lot of that disappointment prevent me from moving forward. So I was stuck. So if you notice, this season of this year of my podcast, the second year, I didn't have that many episodes. And it wasn't until I changed the name of the show did I find that footing again. I found my momentum. I found my why, my desire to create. It clicked. It clicked again. And I realized sometimes all the time, I can't control what people are going to think or say about my show, but I can control who I do have on here and the conversations that I want to have and the topics I want to discuss and who I'm going to bring on the show. And who's to say that everyone will say yes every time I ask them? I may think someone's a guaranteed yes and they may reject me. And I don't take it personally, but in my mind, I have to not set myself up for disappointment so often and then get discouraged and consider that a wash and then just never pick up a mic again. No, that's not what I want to do anymore. If anything, I am going to challenge myself and open up my show to having those difficult conversations with people that may not align with me. But I also have to make sure that I remember the responsibility that I have. Because if anything, I can record it, I could edit it, and I could never post it. I could just have the conversation and let it be. Get it out of our systems. Who knows? And that's the beauty of producing your own show, having the controlling the controllables, right? And again, people are entitled to challenge you and you're entitled to challenge them back. And you would just hope and pray that the conversation and the dialogue can go smoothly. But that isn't always the case. And I let a lot of those disappointing factors prevent me from creating. So moving forward, I'm very mindful of making sure that my consistency doesn't get disrupted by the disappointments. So I hope that helps you in your journey in terms of expectations, responses, reactions, opinions that may come your way or may not come your way. Because sometimes even the silence can be deafening. Like, oh my God, no one likes my show. my show sucks, when in actuality, that's not the case. Sometimes you just need to rethink your strategy when it comes to promoting, advertising, marketing, all of that good stuff. So you don't suck. It's probably just your strategy. And mistake number 3 is forgetting my why. I lost sight of my why. My why got jumbled into I just got to get this episode done. I promised it was going to go out every Monday. I just got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it. And it got to the point where I burned myself out, and I'm learning in therapy that I have to embrace the gray areas, because I can be very 0 or 100, no in between. Most people are 0 to 100. It's the gradual increase. For me, it's like, no, I'm here and then I'm there. I have a podcast. Now I need to be on network television. And I realized immediately that is not the case. And when it came to building the podcast, I was very adamant about bringing light to transaction coordinators and that side of the real estate that doesn't often get the attention that it deserves, on top of teaching people about real estate from a perspective that isn't just about money or isn't about interest rates. Like, what is the emotional side behind all of this that people don't talk about? How can I teach these things in a simpler way that will inspire or motivate or uplift and encourage others to start their journey, whether it's in real estate, being self-employed, buying a home, selling a home, whatever the case may be. And I lost sight of that trying to fill a quota, which actually brings me to my 4th mistake that I talked about earlier. This bonus mistake is I got caught up in quantity over quality, meaning I was so focused on just producing an episode and making sure I didn't miss a Monday. And I'd only missed 2 Mondays. I had 50 episodes that first year of my podcast, 50. And I made no money from it. I did start a coaching business, so I guess I can't say I didn't make money, but from the podcast alone, I invested so much of my time and energy, and I didn't see a return financially in that first year. And I ended up burning myself out. So focusing on quantity and not quality, don't get me wrong, the conversations and the interviews, the solo episodes were amazing. I implore you to go back and actually listen to all of those first 50 episodes of the formerly known as the Transaction Care Podcast, now The Keys, because there's so much free game in there. If you're trying to be self-employed, not trying, if you are actively pursuing self-employment, transaction coordination, a career in real estate. I also wanted to highlight people that were in unconventional jobs that were related to real estate. So real estate was truly just the vessel and the vehicle to get me in the door. And now that I'm here talking about the first 2 years of my podcast, realizing the mistakes I've made and having to, return back to my why, that's also why I've scaled back the number of episodes that I am going to do with the show. So going back to quality over quantity, moving forward, I realize that my show needs to be done in seasons. If I'm just continuously going down this long stream of podcasts and never stopping, I'm going to burn myself out. I need to know that there's an end to this particular chapter in the show. So in 2025, whether it's a solo episode, guest host, guest interview, whatever the case may be, I want it to be focused on a particular theme and or topic. It's probably going to span I think there'll be 4 seasons in a year, much like the actual seasons. But basically, I'll probably do like 7 episodes per quarter. And that'll be season 1, episode 1 of The Keys. And then season 2 will be 7 episodes. Like season 1 will probably be all about money. Season 2 maybe will be all about mental health and how it relates to everything we do within real estate, business, mindset, etc. And really just have the conversations that are not being had online. Everyone's chasing fame, money, but that is fleeting. And I've realized that. I've had my own ups and downs with debt, with wealth, all of that. And I think it's important that we uncover these conversations together, whether it's through podcasting, YouTube trainings, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to go over those 3 plus a bonus mistakes that I made in my first 2 years of podcasting. If you have a podcast or are ready to start a podcast, please reach out to me. My email is tc@transactioncare.com. That is the best way to reach out to me for now until, otherwise noted. So I want to talk to you. I want to get together. If you want one-on-one coaching, that is also available. If you want group coaching, if you want to learn how to become a transaction coordinator, host a podcast, everything will live at transactioncare.com, including links to these videos, links to the Keys podcast, links to coaching, and other services that I have available from here moving forward. So thank you guys for listening, for allowing me this space to share what I've learned, the mistakes I've made, and moving forward, I'm mindful of these things. I'm aware of it. I feel stronger in my decisions. Also, factoring in the work I've done on myself outside of business, whether it's building my relationship with God, becoming more faithful to God, reading more, journaling more. It's all starting to align. And I'm glad to have you guys all on this journey with me. So if any of this resonates with you or provided you with value, please comment, repost, share this with someone that can benefit from it. And stay tuned for part 3 of this podcast series. We're going to talk about and answer the question, should you start a podcast? Spoiler alert, yes. Until then, go ahead and enjoy these videos here. Care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.